just wanted to get a bit of history of CannaPiece and, where you're at in the company, where your history is, just a little bit more about yourself.
For sure, absolutely. I was employee number one at CannaPiece shortly after the four founders. The company was founded in 2018. Going through 2018 into 2019, I helped the team raise the funds. I was the investor relations person in the company. And as soon as we got the funds in and starting into 2019, became the project to have the facility built. So I took over as the vice president of operation and built through with the team to get us operational. And we got our license in end of February 28th, 2020. And literally 2 weeks later, we were into a pandemic. And that obviously was not the most ideal way of trying to get all the equipment in, commission stuff, get new processes, hire people. So it definitely was a challenging time, but I guess adversity brings a lot of strength to the team as well. So the team learning to work in that environment has been able to really achieve things that most other people would have probably said was not possible in that timeline. I mean, we got the building built out to a license-ready state in about 6 months, and it was a bit of a time to get through the Health Canada process, but once we got rolling, we spent the first half of 2020 really getting our processes and a lot of our R&D in line. And by September, October, we were really starting to kind of roll into a more commercial environment. And I would say November was our first big, commercial month where we started to push through. And we've had the exponential growth coming into 2021. The board decided to put their faith in me and let me lead the company as the president, and I've been the 80-hour weeks have not shortened. If anything, have gotten longer. We're now operating on 24 hours, and an incredible team that keeps getting bigger. We're bringing our secondary part of the building online, and that's going to be another probably about 200 staff members to keep up with our demand. There's a lot of top 10 LP customers to ours, and I think the unique part of what we do is we provide services to everything from your kind of niche, low volume, high quality brands, all the way up to really high volume kind of value players. So we've been able to service customers in different parts of that market. We have two main streams, if you want to think about it, between the extracted and formulated products and our dry products. So on the dry products, we do flower packaging, jars, pouches, all the usual, and fairly large pre-roll capacity. Right now we're hovering in that kind of 2 to 3 million territory, and in August with the new addition coming online, we'll be hitting about 5.56 million, as that's been our demand plan, trying to grow into it. On the extraction side, we have our co-solvents, so we have CO2 and ethanol, and but I would say right now the biggest part of our production is really focused on hydrocarbon. That's been the side that really has given us a big advantage. We do a fair volume of other extracts, but in the concentrate world, I would say we're probably about 25 to 26% of the market right now. I don't anticipate we will keep that kind of market share in production.
Yep.
There's a lot of great new players coming to the game, but we were lucky enough to be able to get up to speed and start producing high quality products very quickly. And on the concentrate side, we have everything too. Again, we supply probably two of the lowest price shatters in the country in terms of manufacturing, and all the way up to the kind of products that you tried, where the focus is margin and price wasn't the goal. It was what's the highest quality you could get out of the product. And being able to do that has really given us a chance to really connect with a bigger audience.
Nice.
And being able to say, hey, do you want to be the value focused concentrate market? That is the biggest part of the market. People who have big tolerances tend to use large volumes of concentrate, so we wanted to make sure we could make it affordable. But at the same time, we get passionate, and we want to make sure our products are up there with the connoisseurs, and we can earn the respect of some of the I guess legacy and long-term players of the market.
Nice.
I think we're starting to get there.
Sweet. And it's I think you're the first person I've interviewed that has talked about, well, people have conceptually spoken about, like people who consume extracts are generally higher volume users. But you're really the first one to point out that, like, this is something that we're doing intentionally. Like, we're making these extracts at this price because this market demands them. And I think that's a big challenge for a lot of companies, is to understand that the legacy market, while they're probably the legacy extract market is without a doubt the hardest market to get to from the legal company's perspective. There's absolutely no way that like you can just run on in there and tell those people that like what you're going to give them is better than what they've already got, right? So, um,
No, it's a double-edged battle. I mean, quality is tough because input material is obviously very different in the current market than what a lot of the legacy players have access to. But on the other front is the taxation on concentrates is very punitive. When you think about a gram of high-quality product, anywhere from six to $9 of that value is going to excise tax. You know, come downstream for the other taxes, it makes it very difficult to compete. And again, just the ability to be able to have products that really balance your book is limited, because you have to go through a provincial system to control what is actually getting listed. In an old school kind of traditional business, you'd go to a retailer and you say, hey, I'm going to give you 80% of your volume of sales from these really, limited SKUs, but they're great price, very accessible to everyone. But you always had an opportunity to say, hey, I want my brand to also have, a top shelf opportunity as well, and have something that is more expensive that can allow you to really showcase what you make. And that's what it is. You look at it right now in the legal market, nobody's really had the I'd say the traction to even be able to talk about $100 plus concentrate. But we've seen them in the US, we see them in the legacy market. Really unique genetics, low yielding, high quality product will fetch that price. And that's the difference. If you went to a liquor store, you may buy your $30-$40 bottle of whiskey on a regular basis, but sometimes you want to splurge and spend $300-$400 on a bottle of scotch. So we want to make sure that eventually as a market we can get there and have the choice out there in the market for people to be able to buy everything from the ultra premium all the way out to the safe high quality production, but still driven at a low price point.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting. Again, you're mentioning looking into this future state of like where we can have a market where we've got the low and the high prices. And I think a lot of producers or companies came out into the market thinking that they could hit the high price first because that was what was accessible to them. Because, obviously they've invested a ton of money into their systems and they don't want to lose money. So they were afraid to price things, lower. And then they came out into the market, obviously last year and a lot still into this year, there was a ton of extracts that were just way too high in price. And then, it unfortunately, it did two things. One is it pushed the market way, way, way down. And then it just made people hesitant to try out expensive stuff again. So people went back to, probably their legacy market or wherever they came from, that the product was expensive, but they knew it was amazing. So, it's cool to see that you're thinking about that. And I think, as we look towards the second half of the year, the end of this year, we'll be able to start seeing $100 products and, things that are like actually amazing quality that are really worth the price that they're being charged for. So, yeah.
Yeah, I'm hoping. And I mean, a couple of our customers that already have fairly high priced, high value flower products in the market are probably going to be the ones that have the platform to ask that. It's not every day people are willing to go pay, big bucks, 12, 18, 16, $20 a gram for flower. But certain customers do get that. And when you start to have that ability and have the traction with your customer that's willing to pay for quality, then that's when you say, hey, I can also drive this on the concentrate side. I can really give you the experience you want from your flower in a concentrate. And I think the genetics are going to be a big part of that. Fortunately, a lot of what you see in the concentrates right now is just the same genetics being, rinse and repeat. There's some great guys working on genetics. It's been amazing watching Mother Labs and the guys at Tuna Room and Legacy Market. There's a bunch of guys out there really trying to bring fresh genetics in and keep it alive. But we still seem to see a lot of, I call it, kindergarten soccer, where everybody sees one genetic and everybody wants to run to that. And I think when you start to see the maturity of the market, it's the guys that say, I'm going to go where the ball is going to end up, not where the ball is right now. So hopefully we start to see more of that. And There's so many incredible genetics that I've had exposure to when I was in the California market, and just dying to see them come back and become something that we can extract and put out there as a concentrate.
Yeah, that's awesome, and you know, like if I think that like the easiest example of what you're talking about with the like chase the genetics is we all know the black cherry punch. You know, it's just like the
Oh
most
God!
like I love
And it
the
was one of my favorites.
yeah.
And it's just like, oh come on, why did you guys do this to me?
Again. So you know,
But listen, there's only still a handful of them that are executing it well. And I always want to say that execution is another one. Pink Kush, Black Cherry Punch, the old Shishka berry, which everybody was growing for a little while.
yep.
And you start to see that. But I think when you start to see some of these new micros that are coming online, some of these craft growers that even that are starting to breed in-house, that are starting to get the nice crosses, and that's where we start to hopefully see people say, the value is in genetics, the value is in execution, and if you can get on those two trains and really put the time and effort into curing things properly. And I remember hearing in one of the old conversations from the early days in the legal industry, people saying, "Well, what do you mean cure it? We'll just put it in a jar and send it out. It's just going to cure in the jar." And I said, "Well, I think we have a very different perspective on how curing should be done." But I'm excited to see the solventless side really pick up. I'm very excited to see that people are going back to their roots and willing to go put the hard work in. It is not easy. It is not cost effective, but you see a few of the brands out there, the guys with big, really excited to see, the Cody Colson and some of the guys out there trying to bring some incredible product to the market. Fume. We're starting to see the second wave, the wave of the guys who are passionate about product, getting an opportunity to really come out there and say that this is our the fruit of our labor. What do you guys think? And I think with the past couple of months and with the success I've seen from solventless and higher end concentrates, I think we're going to have a pretty exciting couple of years ahead.
Nice. Yeah, I just it's funny that you mentioned solventless. If you look over here, I just bought a rosin press. Like
I noticed that.
so I've been playing around with that, but like, just testing it. I am dumbfounded by how you can scale solventless and rosin. Like just, you're pressing this. It's not something you just can't hammer the pressure down, and like, you can get like a 10 or like, I don't know, like a plate that's about double the size, but still that's like maybe 28 grams if you're lucky, and you have to get a huge pre-press, like just crazy amounts of work to go into something at a scale like that, compared to like you use a solvent and you've got a giant jar of it, you put it in a giant canister. Obviously it's not that simple, but like it's a little bit more scalable and workable.
Hydrocarbon is pretty difficult to scale too.
Oh really?
I mean, when you start to think, especially fresh frozen,
Okay.
you think about fresh frozen can have yields anywhere from kind of 2 to 5%. The 5% are really unicorns these days. You don't really see them in the legal market, but you get a lot of product that's going to yield in that kind of 2.5 to 3.5 mark. And imagine the sheer volume of frozen cannabis you need to keep on site, and the amount of waste you have to manage afterwards. But yeah, and a lot of solvent.
Yeah, I could
Doing high quality concentrates requires a lot of solvent.
how just because we're talking about fresh frozen here, like, I mean, how big are the fridges that you store this stuff in, and B, is the entire process in cold rooms? Like, I mean, obviously there's, is there any temperature sensitivity to creating that product, through the whole process?
Very much so. We have right now we have a couple of large walk-in freezers. I think in each of them we can probably keep about 2,500 to 3,000 kilos of fresh frozen flower. But the new freezer that we're going to try to bring online over the next couple of months will allow us to keep in the 15-20 metric ton territory. So that'll give us more room. But yeah, the goal is to keep everything very, very cold. So every step of the way, think of it as a freezer to freezer move. Even when you're going to your extraction space, you don't want that frozen material sitting out. So we put a lot of time and care in ensuring everything is cold. And really, really big chillers to try to run very cold solvent. And it's much like anything else. Think about, like, if you were trying to melt sugar off or something, or fat off or something, think about the difference between cold water versus hot water. It's similar with solvent. Warm solvent is much more effective. but it becomes indiscriminate. So it starts to pull everything. When you want to target something, you're going to be very cold, and you're going to spend a lot of time trying to make sure that you don't over extract the product. You don't get, it's very easy to blow the mark and end up with that. I don't know if you've had the experience. You get that planty kind of taste and flavor.
Mm-hmm.
Even if the color is great, you're like, this looks great, but why am I getting that like planty
Plant.
profile? And it's just like, yeah, you passed the mark. You went a little too far.
Yeah, that's
You know, being really careful with that is the distinction between, you know, a high quality product that you can still afford to put in the market versus a high quality product that that you can put out in the market, but you'll either lose money or not be able to get it listed because the price point you need to be at.
Yeah, I've definitely, I mean, there's actually sort of there's two flavors that I've had on the legal market that I know of. And one is obviously you've over extracted this product. You know, you could call it second wash or something like that, because it's just sort of like, it just doesn't taste great. And, it will work, but like you could just notice the texture's all just a little wonky. And then the second one that I had, and it's a different flavor, is really, really old product, or the extract has been sitting in a jar for a very long time. There was a certain LP that I purchased a product from, and when I looked at the bag, I noticed the bag had the actual printed THC numbers on it. It wasn't, the bag wasn't created and then they didn't print it on. It was like they purchased the bags with those numbers. And I was like, instantly I knew it. I'm like, okay. So I reached out to somebody and he's like, yeah, it takes about 8 weeks or, 4 to 8 weeks to get those bags made. So if anything, at best, it's already that old. Plus the packaging date would be when it was put in that bag. So, just, you can taste it. It tastes very musky. It doesn't have a flavor. It just sort of tastes like old. So, but that's
I know that product, and I'm not going to call them out, but I bought the same thing, and I'm like,
I love how we know exactly which one it is. That's too good.
I wish they had done a better job, but I think a lot of it is trial and error too. I mean, we got to realize in the legal market, you don't have the freedoms that you did in the legacy market. You, as soon as you extracted your product, like, you would be able to, within a couple of days, test it, taste it, be like, I think I think we missed the mark on this one, guys. I'm not going to put it out. But and that's changing. I mean, in the most recent hearing with Health Canada, they're talking about changing like you can get a human sensory license, but it's a very different process now. They're trying to make it a little bit easier, a little bit more streamlined for LPs with processing licenses to be able to use their staff and their own people to be able to really dial in that product by not just analytical testing, but subjective human sensory testing to be able to look at it and be like, does this taste good? I mean, I know it's safe. I know it's got the right potency. I know it's got the right amount of terpenes, but do they all jive together?
Yeah.
And I think when we start to see more of that, you'll see more and more discerning customers being able to say, hey, this didn't hit the mark, guys. You got to improve, and people have the ability to make those changes as they go from batch to batch or cultivar to cultivar. But age is one part of it, is the concentrate. The other part of it, Justin, is the way they're stored. People, very few people, unfortunately, pay attention to the storage and transport of concentrates. You hear people say, "Oh my God, I got my shatter and it was sugared." I'm like, well, let's trace that. Shatter doesn't like to go through heat cycles, right?
Yep.
Hot, cold, hot, cold. I mean, you want to sugar your shatter, take it out of the fridge, put it in your pants pocket, go to your friend's house, put it in the fridge, wake up tomorrow morning, and you've started the process. You've started that but it doesn't. It's not like it's destroying the product. It's not ruining it. It's just now makes it more difficult to handle, and obviously it's not to the product standard. And that's where you start to see also a lot of players will lean on to products that are more stable. The sugars, the waxes, the crumbles, they tend to be a lot more stable. Shatters the top product to keep stable. And a lot of people, their trick to it is to make sure there is no terpenes left in it. They overheat it, overcook it, because terpenes don't really help your stability. But there are ways to stabilize that and make sure that you don't have the other imperfections, so that you can still carry terpenes. I mean, most of the shatter that we put out in the market kind of sits anywhere from 4.5 to 5.5% terpenes, and that's the difference between a shatter you put in a hot rig and you just get your THC dose in, versus something that you start with a cold start and you want to experience the terps and then increase your temperature and get the full effect.
Nice. So it's just so funny. Like you mentioned the terpene percents on the shatter, so I already know what company you're talking about, and know which one. But yeah, exactly. I'm not going to say anything more. It just makes me laugh a little bit. But you kind of brought up 2 points with the old product, and B, the storage. I think early on in the extracts market, you had people, especially with the one that we're just talking about. I'll bet you the people that created that extract were like, oh, this is going to be great. We're going to make this. We'll get it bagged, and then as soon as they produce the product, they're just like roadblock, roadblock, roadblock until they were able to find a way to get it, actually like just make it happen, get it in the market, like let's go, that kind of thing. So I think a lot of that happened with.
And it's hard, man. I mean, it's not easy.
No.
I absolutely sympathize with people who have to overcome those challenges. But again, there are things you can do if you're waiting. You can try to store the product much more closely monitored, much better temperatures, ways to try to really prevent any degradation. Sometimes it's not really that you had bad product to start with. I mean, remember, terpenes are solvents. You've got cannabinoids in there. You've got all sorts of things. And to add to all of this, oxygen, like a lot of the products that we keep in bulk, we purge up oxygen, so they're stored in an environment with very little oxygen and in cool environments. So those are things that'll help you preserve it. But again, not everybody has that option. Not everybody has giant fridges and freezers to be able to store large volumes of concentrates. And then again, you go even at the retail level, a lot of the retailers now, you're starting to see with the live products, they're being a little bit better and storing it with their beverages, because now a lot of them have fridges in their stores. But a lot of them don't, and they'll keep that in the back of the facility in a regular storage room.
Yep.
And not that it's a problem if you're keeping it, couple of weeks, but you end up having something sit there for a month, or maybe have a hot summer day that your AC wasn't working. You're now starting to kind of challenge yourself in the quality of the product that's going to go out to the consumer.
Yeah, yeah, and that was another thing was, transportation of the product as well wasn't being handled correctly at the very beginning. It's like just so many roadblocks for making sure this worked that were taken for granted previously, because product was easier to package, it was easier to sell quickly, it was easier to do all this stuff, and now you guys are having to compensate for all that. So yeah, I guess let's talk about the extraction process a little bit, and maybe just talk about why you guys have found. Well, you said BHO was your most preferred method of extraction at this point, and how did you guys come to that conclusion, and what led you to that?
I mean, we still use different blends as well. It's I always say there's no one tool for every extraction. When you think about when you're building something, you can't just say I have a Phillips screwdriver, and if the screw doesn't fit the screwdriver, we'll I guess etch it out and make it a nice little adjustment to the screw, and we use that same screwdriver. You have to find out what you want to try to do. And we've experimented, and we've used different blends, and we do use different blends. But right now, I would say hydrocarbon, especially with the ability to control both the temperature and the solvent volumes, really gives us a lot of selectability in a concentrate form. That's not to say that we don't use other processes to be able to extract terpenes if it was going, say, for a vape product, or there's still some incredible products you can make with CO2 at scale, obviously, but hydrocarbons are the route if you want to really go to terpene preservation. Being able to we've like that concentrate that we both connected on initially is sitting at 18.5, and the last batch of it that we ran sat at 20.5. So a lot of people say, well, where did that terpene come from? It's half the work is ours, but a big part of it is also the cultivation. Knowing when you harvest that, fresh frozen harvests are essential to be taken down early, and you'll start to see it even in the COAs. You start to see live resin that doesn't show a whole lot of CBG in it. You can tell the cultivator did not really take it down early. And the focus for me, I mean, when I look at live resin input material to help our clients pick is the terpenes. The cannabinoid is the part that comes with it, but you want to focus on your cultivation to be able to keep as much of that terpene and be able to freeze it quickly enough, handle it carefully enough, so that by the time it's in our hands, we have the opportunity to start with a bigger field to be able to. It's like if you have X and I get 100% out of it, great, I did my job, but it has to be there for me to be able to extract it.
Yeah.
We're starting to see a lot of great outdoor cultivators that are doing incredible work with fresh frozen and improving their processes. I mean, some of them are now getting down to like a 30-minute from harvest to freezing times, and that's where, you know, when you talk about old school, where you had literally your room where you had your cultivation, and your extraction was, you know, doors down, and you were going through this quick process. But with the current regs, you know, you have to be able to get it frozen. You have to go through your testing, get the material released before you can go into extraction. So um, uh, the technologies that are coming online, and the people who are getting involved are really giving the extractors and a better canvas to paint on, should I say?
Nice, nice.
But for us, I know quality and purity on the high end products is there. I know you and I had a conversation about remediation, what a lot of people have been doing in the industry. To me, CRC or color remediation is really about a touch-up phase. It's when you know you had a great cultivar, you had a great cultivator, but somebody along the way missed the mark. You know, it was harvested a little late, or you know, it wasn't frozen quickly enough, and things like that that come into play. And at that point, you really need very little to be able to really kind of clear those imperfections. And it's nothing wrong with it. It's nothing bad. I mean, to me, when a product's a little dark, it doesn't mean it's bad for you. But for me, there's a thing that you told you. It's like, hey, we all eat oranges and bananas, but we choose to take the peel off to take the part we want to consume. That's not to say I've seen people literally chew and eat the banana peel and nothing bad's going to happen to them, but they probably don't have the same flavor profile. They don't have the same, you know, experience. For us, that's where it is. Our job is to try to take as much of those imperfections out as we can. Most of these higher end concentrates that you're seeing are going to sit north of 95, 96% terpenes and cannabinoids.
Nice.
I mean, we've had lots that are sitting at like 98% terpene and cannabinoids. I mean, basically, what that 2%, a lot of people ask, what is those 2%? Yeah. Mostly it's stuff that analytical testing can't really detect. You know, sometimes certain cannabinoids and terpenes break down a little bit. They're still there, but they will not register on the test as the same products. And there's still a bunch of terpenes and flavonoids that we don't have standards to test for. So as we begin to understand more of the plant and more of the terpenes and flavonoids that come together to give us that whole experience, we'll start to potentially be able to identify more and more of it. Nice. But for us, it's not necessary. You really don't need to use it as a crutch. There is time and place for everything. It's filtration. It's you know, some people use mechanical filtration to take certain impurities out. Some people use you know, media to do that.
So
for me, it's about understanding what you're trying to keep out of that concentrate. So when you talk about color or off flavors, it's you know, the lipids, the fats, the chlorophyll. You've got broken down bits of fiber and other items that are going to be in the plant, and the better job you do of excluding those, the clearer the product's going to be. But the actual color is very much dictated by your trichomes. When you see very, very light, very clear products, it's usually comes from early harvest where the trichomes are still clear, versus people who go to a full amber. You tend to have a deeper color, kind of a richer color in the product. And again, that's not, to me, that's not an imperfection. It's just the quality and the nature of the product. A good example of that would be the Fume Black Cherry Punch live rosin. I mean, it's purple. They don't color it. They don't add anything to it, but that's just the nature of the trichomes. They're going to have that the color look, and I appreciate seeing that. It's the variety that we see out of this plant that I think has made a lot of us passionate to continue pursuing new ways of consuming it.
Nice. So I was going to ask about, you know, CRC. What is in your opinion, the best application for that? Like, where is the best application to use CRC? Maybe from less like a product perspective, but more like end user product type perspective.
So for when if you had a product where, say for example, you had an input material that the terpene profile wasn't going to be great, and your focus is going to be to try to go for the highest content and the highest purity of THCA. So say your job was to try to, you know, mine for large clear diamonds, that's where CRC will have a great application. because the more you take out of those impurities and just pass your THCA across, then you're just going to have an easier time being able to isolate that out of the other products. Generally, products that the focus is going to be more on cannabinoids is where CRC will shine. The products that you're going to aim for flavor and you know, the experience, then I would say CRC is probably something you want to try to stay away from. It's very hard to kind of hit those large terpene concentrations with the media. It does tend to punish you quite a bit when you go through it.
Gotcha. Nice. That's yeah, it's definitely been, like I said, almost on the internet, CRC has become like that legend, this like mystery thing. And so, you know, when you look at the unregulated market and everything, it's so funny how it's tainted that the image of it, even though half the time people are saying it is what it is, it really isn't actually the case. You know, when I was enjoying like legacy extracts, like I was always assuming that it was, you know, some of it was CRC, but it was very likely that it was a lot of live, you know, live plant extracts, you know. So
fresh frozen is a place where you really shouldn't need to go too much into color remediation, because it's cold. You continue to keep it cold. You extract it cold. Cured material is a little different, obviously. Aged material can start to play a big part in that. And again, when you start to talk about a value shatter that again, the consumer is not after the high flavor. It's about delivering price point and I think about it as the lowest milligram cost for the cannabinoid that you're delivering to the customer. Then yes, you have an opportunity to use older material and be able to get it to still become a stable shatter or a stable product that the consumer can enjoy. So those are places where CRC definitely has its place. But again, it's very misunderstood because it's generalized as just CRC.
Yep.
What you put in that column to use as your filter media is going to have a huge impact on your end product. And when you think about people's misconceptions in the legacy market may have been that they didn't trust what people were using in that media. You know, was it really the right grade? Did it? Yes, it may have taken some color out or some other impurities, but did it actually leave residuals? Did it leach into my product? And much like anything else in the industry, that people who use care and select their materials carefully are going to obviously have a trust built up with their consumer base, and if they're going to use things responsibly, there's nothing wrong. Same way being, you know, people using, you know, non-food grade alcohols for extraction. You know, that's you know. That does it harm you right away? No, but I mean, that impurity is what's going to be built up in your product, and you're going to consume it over time. So it probably doesn't do you any good. So for me, it's filtration. You know, would people really get upset if you put something through a submicron filter to get particles out? They say no. I mean, you didn't add anything to the product. You just took some stuff out. CRC can work the same way, but it just takes a lot more finesse, and it's very easy to miss the mark on it. So I think a lot of people have used it as just a shortcut, but I don't think that's necessarily the right application.
Nice. And so, you know, when you talk about, you know, like the type of media, sorry, and the amount that you're using, and maybe just in general, is there like any set of standardized levels and numbers that you use during extraction, like, you know, just in terms of how you're creating it? Like, there's no standardization at all in this industry is kind of what I'm getting at. Is that right? Or
No, there is very strict regulations on what you're allowed to use. Anything that's going to touch your extract or your product that's going to go to the consumer has very strict guidelines from Health Canada in terms of what it needs to meet, what it can contain, what it can't contain. You know, it's very easy to find media that has heavy metal issues, that can have you know, other chemicals in it that can leach. So the legal market's got very, very limited amount of media that would actually pass the full requirements, and a lot of it is because some of them were made in places that don't have the same regulations, so they don't test for it, they don't think about that in their manufacturing process. But much like solvent itself, you know, every tank of solvent we buy has a certificate of analysis. We know that it's got the right purity, it doesn't have the wrong, other minor solvents in it that we don't want the product exposed to, and, clean tanks, clean processes, and the testing will show that. And in other environments, people may not have had that same care and quality into what they use. So for us, it's if you're going to do high quality work, you're going to have to use high quality tools and high quality solvent, high quality people that really put the care and time into it. I'm a big believer nothing good ever really happens fast. So you got to put the time and care into it.
Nice. And just thinking about product and creating product in general, like in terms of input product, how much processing are you doing of like dry product, whole buds, trim run, whatever it might be? Like, what's the kind of, if you could give like a ballpark distribution of what you're processing?
We don't use any trim in our concentrate products. It's all bud. Not always the biggest bud, obviously. When you're extracting, the size of the bud is in the target. But a lot of the fresh frozen we get are these big honking buds, and you always look at it, you're like, yeah, no, that's going to be a good run. So the higher the potency, obviously, the more efficient your process is. It's much like trying to take something out of a big pot, right? Once it gets to the bottom of it, it's harder to get something out than when it's full. So extraction is much the same. If the vessel that's carrying your product has a lot more cannabinoids and terpenes, your work's a lot easier. But we process thousands of kilograms a month without kind of getting into the real numbers. Yeah. But a few thousand of each, I would say.
Nice. That's cool. And so obviously you guys are working on expanding. You said you have 50,000 square feet. You're getting to 100. What, is there any large focus or any shifts you guys are planning on doing? Like, are we going to jump into, growing? Obviously, I don't think you would be. You're processing right now, but
no, we like to stay in our lane and specialize. And I think that's been one of the best things that's happened in the cannabis industry is people stop thinking about these monster verticals, literally from the seed all the way to the store with the customer. I know there's a couple that have tried to kind of keep that control, but in the long term, when you look at other industries, big CPG, alcohol, tobacco, you have to start to specialize in the part of that supply chain and part of that product chain that you're good at. We're good at manufacturing. That's what we focus on. Expanding will be obviously bringing new products, new product formats. Our director of product development and innovation is a genius. I managed to convince to come back from California, and he's been a great part of our success. And we're going to continue to really bring some of those products into the market. You'll start to see some of our live resin vape products in the market very soon over the next couple of months. And I think that's going to be another big shift, being able to bring the kind of experience you had with the concentrate that you did have in a vape format is where we want to really try to give everybody an opportunity of a more convenient consumption form. We're working with a few new tricks up our sleeves. There's a few new solvents and few new processes that we're going to try to bring in over the next few months. But we believe that the concentrate market is going to continue to grow much like it did in California and Colorado. We believe the vape category will continue to grow. I think flower is always going to be king, but I do believe that the format that flower is going to be in the market is going to look different. You're starting to see more large format, which is more in line with what the legacy market was about. I don't remember ever going, outside of high school days, you don't remember going and asking somebody for a gram of weed. Everything was, half ounce, a quarter ounce, an ounce. So that's where we start to see that. And I think that'll have two effects. One, I think it'll make some of the products more affordable. But more importantly, one of the areas that I've always seen as a shortcoming in the industry has been packaging. The sheer amount of packaging. I've had a few friends, we kind of challenged each other to keep all the packaging from the cannabis we consume in a month in a clear bag. And I think you've seen a few of the people have also posted, and it was actually pretty sad to watch. I know it's recyclable, and I really do appreciate that. But again, even when you talk about like black jars become the standard, like everybody likes the color, but most people don't know black jars aren't really recyclable. Yeah. So it's this balance where you start to see. The other thing I'm starting to see from a lot of consumer packaging in the higher end is making reusable packaging. glass jars will always have a value. You can always put something in a glass jar. Seeing these metal tins, they will always have an application. So starting to kind of go both ways is going to have an advantage. But those larger formats are going to give way to also consumers that are going to look for very easy consumption. That's where you've seen the big growth in the pre-roll category from last year to this year. And I think even us, we were surprised, when we started with a few of our customers who were like, well, we need 600,000 a month. And at first we kind of giggled and said, are you sure? Those customers are now at like 1.4, 1.2 million pre-rolls. So when we start to see that, it's a nice consistent burn. Again, we've got both automation and manual. We have customers now that want these beautiful crown and folded tops. And then we have customers who, are doing large quantity packs that are twisted and in smaller formats, the 0.3s and the 0.35s. And that's going to become the easy to go for consumers that are going to say, I'm going to smoke a few a day, but I don't want to have to go through the process. I just want to have a nice tin to pop open, take one out, and continue. You also start to see, obviously, the shift in other formats of pre-rolls, such as the readies, and I'm sure we're going to start to see more of those in the market as well, because I know other than us, there are a lot of other players that are going to be pushing forward to offer variety, and that's where the manufacturing is faced to continue to bring new formats so that our customers can pick how they want that product to be packaged and end up in the consumer hand.
So, just thinking about packaging and formats, again, this might not be a question you're able to answer, but talking about vape carts, obviously we've had in the Canadian market so far, we just have C-cell-like carts. Is there going to be, or, if you could tell me, because in the legacy market, they now have the white ceramic carts. Is that coming soon? I mean, obviously, if you can't confirm it, that's fine, but I'm assuming that that's like in the next inevitable months that we're going to see those white ceramic carts on the market. So just,
They're coming. There's a few customers of ours that have also looked into them, but it really comes down to the 510 cart is dominant. I mean, you see a vast majority of the sales in that side, but the challenge with the 510 cart is that it can't really control temperature. People have the perception that they can control temperature with putting different voltage into it, working with different wattage coils. But at the end of the day, you put the wrong cart on the wrong battery and you toast it.
Yep.
Live resin carts are one of those. I always tell people, always go to the lowest temperature. You can always come up, but if you went too high, you may leave an effect and an aftertaste in your cart that you can't get out. That's where where I personally, I'm a big fan of closed loop systems. I'm a big fan of packs. I've been passionate about that platform, looking at execution, Fume and Talal putting the orange cookies packs cart in the market was game changing. To be able to go to low temperature and give somebody that really full flavor experience because you're now controlling temperature and not wattage. It was really unique. Dosis is now kind of gone down that road that they have pretty solid temperature control with their pods. So we're going to start to see probably a differentiator for some of those higher end brands, those higher end quality products much the same as now it's become an expected consumer thing that if you're going to sell me really high quality flower, I want to see it in a glass jar. I think we're going to start to see if you're going to sell me a really high quality vape product, well, like I mean, solventless products. We're going to have jellies and cool sauce pens. I think the consumers right now may be really focused on THC content, and it's really sad because I mean, when I go and buy wine, I'm not looking at the alcohol percentage. If you ask me of all the wines that are in my cellar, I couldn't tell you which one is what and what percentage is in it, or which one is higher or lower. Same thing with the liquor. So I'm hoping that the people will start to appreciate the flavors and the profiles, and understand that, you know, live resin carts are a great example. I mean, you can get distillate pens now that are pushing 90% THC, and there's live resin carts that are going to be at, you know, even mid to low 70s.
Yep.
And I guarantee you that live resin pen is going to hit you a lot harder and keep you, you know, in that euphoric state much longer. And the come down is going to be much nicer. So it's a very different experience. Much like, you know, taking a really cheap vodka shot or sipping on a nice glass of, you know, cognac or whiskey or wine. So that's where I think the temperature controlled pods are going to have an advantage. But the 510 will always be there. It's accessible, it's easy, it's cost effective, and there is improvements coming. I mean, you see two delineations: the ones that are going to go to full stainless steel because they want to have that kind of control that there is nothing that's going to be in their product that's got, you know, the cool metal look. But you also get the flip side where people are going to that white ceramic kind of experience. And I know a few of the great legacy brands have made those switches, especially in BC. And I know what you're looking at, and I hope to start to see that more in the legal market. But the part with the vape carts is also their filling. Some carts are easier to fill. Some carts don't have the greatest of abilities to be transported. You know, we all remember the early days of the vapes when people flew some of these carts around and ended up with massive leakage. So I want to see people really put the time and effort into testing things because, again, same thing that we said, tools, not all carts and not all concentrates are compatible. I want to see people spend a little bit more time in their selection other than just how much does it cost and how does it look. But is your oil compatible with it? And we start to see that now even from the hardware manufacturers where they're putting the time and effort. They're trying to get involved with the producers and the processors to say, hey, we're here to help you guys find the suitable cart. I mean, they're selecting within their brands and within their production, but the fact that we're noticing that the cart itself has to be matched to the oil in it, that's a big differentiator. And I mean, it's been great in the legal market where very early on we made a standard that, you know, a lot of these dilutants such as you know, PG and VG and you know, people putting all sorts of mystery stuff into their products was okay. But on the same note, I said you can take the regs and try to control it, but people will find a way, and that's where you started to see people go into these kind of colorless, odorless, tasteless terpenes, which is where, you know, the process is the same. To me, I love seeing cannabis terpenes in vapable products. I'm not judging botanical terpenes; they have a place. You know, they're a great part of many industries, food and cosmetics, and all sorts of CPG products. I just believe that as a consumer, I want the clarity of where the sources of those terpenes are to be able to make the decision. If I'm buying a $22 distillate cart, I should probably know what's going to be in it. But if somebody's going to get into a more mid-market product, they really should have a choice as to what they consume.
Nice. Yeah, that's you know, it's interesting that because I am personally not a fan of added botanical terpenes or, you know, even cannabis derived terpenes. It just tastes weird. But it's interesting because a couple weeks ago I was hanging out with some friends and we were all trying like a bunch of extracts. We're doing some dabs and stuff, and one of the girls there who was, you know, maybe in her early 20s, out of all the extracts we had rosins, we had shatter, we had the Purple Hills, we were just doing trying everything out. And she liked the one with the added terpenes the most. And I realized the reason why she liked it so much is because the younger generation of people have been brought up on vapes, and all the vapes in the world have added artificial terpenes in them. And it's this they've got this taste, and so now they're not even really smoking, like in my opinion they're not really interested in smoking the cannabis outside of the effects of it, and the flavors just remind them of what they enjoy. So it's an interesting thing, because I never had thought, I was like always just like, whatever, I don't care about this stuff. And then when I talked to somebody, I was like, oh, there is an application for this. But it's kind of one of those
Yeah.
interesting points.
Yeah, the e-liquid that unfortunately a lot of young people have been exposed to, and it was eye-opening for me. I mean, I
Yep.
hadn't been around that world, and I was experiencing it. It was the thing. It really hit me a few months ago, and I was out. I was out there, and a few friends had their kids out, and they were talking about e-liquids, and I'm like, wow. I mean, our generation never had any of that. It was, yeah, you have people that smoke
Yep.
cigarettes, you have people who smoke pot, but that was about it. I mean, you didn't have these funny e-liquids, and yes, those are all botanical terpenes that have been blended in, and it's a certain flavor profile.
Yep.
It's like the really fruity stuff. It's like apple, watermelon. I'm like, well, guys, those are not really. They're not. That's not what we're after.
Yeah.
But essentially, that is the other side of the industry that's almost going the route of the nicotine vapables, right?
Yep.
They have the active ingredient. Great, we want nicotine. In this case, the active ingredient is THC. Beyond that, the consumer is saying, I want this flavor, and that's where you start to actually look. If you see, as we got more into these botanical terpenes, it went away from trying to get the botanical terpenes that were profiled to cannabis strains, where it's like, oh, this is a Skittles, or this is a Ghost Strain Haze. But now you start to see actual fruits being named, right? This is a grapefruit vape pen. This is a watermelon. This is a tangerine. And to each their own, but it's not for me at all. I do actually like cannabis drive terpenes, but the way that they're derived has to be done right. There's steam distillation, solventless processes. CO2 does a great job if you know how to really drive it to extract terpenes. But that's where you got to be, Justin, to be able to get a cost-effective cannabis drive terpene. So when you start to see all these improvements in outdoor cultivation, that's where you're going to get it. Nice. You're going to get an opportunity where you're going to get low cost of cultivation with decent terpenes. You'll be able to get that product in there, get your terpenes separated so you can protect them so they don't get degraded or damaged through the rest of the purification. Then you take that product to a high quality distillate and you bring them back together. Or even a full spectrum winterized oil. I think that's potentially one of the underserviced parts of the market, because there are flavors within the. If you're a flower guy, you will probably appreciate a winterized oil pen a lot more than a distillate pen, because it's a closer experience, it's a closer flavor profile. Nice. And I think that'll continue to kind of keep its strength, but. I don't think the botanical terpenes are going to go away, whether we like it or not. Unfortunately, they've been ingrained into society beyond just cannabis, and we're going to have to live with it. I just hope that through regulation, and that's another part that's coming up from Health Canada, is going to be much more controlled what flavorings you're allowed to add in there, and that's where I'm hoping that they're going to start to bring much more stringent standards as to how they're produced. There are some fairly harmful synthetic flavors that people produce, and I don't know, and I hope that they haven't made their way into the legal market, but they were definitely part of the legacy market, and hopefully we can stop that spread. So at least it's a safe product, whether or not we agree on its source or its palatability. We'll leave that to the consumer.
Nice. Yeah, so I'll wrap up shortly. I mean, we could probably talk forever. I know I know you've got a job to do. I've got to go to work in like 40 minutes here. But you brought up really two cool points here. Is one, the slightly more dangerous added terpenes. I think, and you can correct me if I'm wrong here, but I think in a lot of cases they're safe until they reach a certain temperature. Is that right? Yeah. And
it's all different. There are terpenes that in high concentration. Listen, terpenes are solvents.
Yeah.
You can extract with limonene. You can strip things off with limonene. Like, these are things that when they exist in their natural form and in their natural balance within a plant, I I can understand. I want to make sure that that they're protected. But when we go and we separate or synthesize, or we concentrate them and then we manually add them in, I think there should be a little bit more control in terms of what and how they can be added in.
Hmm.
And again, there's these dominant terpenes that come from your common fruits, from your citrus to your herbs and spices. But there are some very unique terpenes out there that don't have the flavor profile, that don't have the typical application, and they're used as the blank canvas because we've gotten to a point where we're trying to make the product fit the hardware instead of making the hardware fit the product.
Mm.
And that's the part where I want to make sure that there's better regulation.
Nice. Yeah, and so with my point here was that you mentioned temperature control, and so I don't have a dab rig. I would like to buy one at some point. I just never got around to it. I got really deep into wax pens and box mods with temperature controlled coils that I use. So one thing that I noticed recently, and on the 510 front, is brand new from Yokan. They sell a lot of the vape batteries and products you could see in stores. Is Yokan just recently introduced a pen which does what most people who have used unregulated pens do, which is just pulse it as you vape. You don't hold it for the whole time. You hold 5 seconds, let go. So Yokan just released a pen that does that, simulates it as you push the button. So we're going to see a little bit of that, but it's really unfortunate because the market that I've been involved with has been these wax pens. I can replace these tiny coils, cost like $5 for a new coil. I don't have to spend very much money, but like I wish that market was viable right now. It isn't, because there's just not enough people that are like kind of nerding out. You have to download hardware and firmware and stuff on the vape and tune things. But if we ever reach that place, like that would be amazing, because in my mind, like I've got it's like a donut coil, and it really, the reason why I like it so much is very low temperature. It's a little bit wasteful for that sense, because you're not really going to be combusting all your product ever, but or consuming all your product, not combusting, of course. But it would be nice to see that, because my experience with vapes has changed completely, because I'm able to taste this stuff like so clearly. I can ensure that I get all the flavor in my experience. So I hope to see that in the rec market. But I do think that there are going to be some improvements just on the straight 510 side as we kind of get to that point. It's been amazing that nobody has done that sort of like throttled temperature control or simulated temperature control on the 510 carts, but that'll happen eventually. So hopefully,
yeah, we'll have to wait and see how the carts behave with it. I believe that the technology is there. It's just the cost, right? The minute you start to kind of try to adapt the 510 platform and really go after those kind of things, it's going to add cost to the cart. I agree with you that it should really come probably from the battery side. We just have to get to a point where maybe that battery has the ability to sense some of those temperatures without the need of the coil actually giving it any sort of feedback.
yeah.
I think one of the challenges that people have had also with 510, especially in Canada, is the temperature fluctuations. If you're out in the winter and you leave that vape cart in your car and people get in there and say, "Oh, I want to just take this thing for a ride," well, that thing is awfully cold. It's probably not going to give you what you want. You end up with clogging. You end up with leaking if in the summer if it's too hot. So I think we definitely have an added challenge in Canada with our temperature shift. But I did hear about the Yokan, and I'm pretty excited to try it. But as you said, the handheld concentrate consumption platforms are expanding. I mean, I've tried the Toki. I own one. The Torch that I believe Green Tank manufactures. I mean, Premium 5 has them branded on their brand. It's been that was actually a nice consumer product. But even going up into some of the other products out there, I really like the Utilian 5, I believe it was. It comes with 2 coils, so you have the multi small coil when you want to kind of consume your high terpene concentrates. And then it has this big coil that you can consume like your diamonds and your higher concentrate products, higher cannabinoid products, where you need high heat, and that will go cherry red. So it's nice to be able to kind of control it on the lower temp, get a little bit of your terpenes, but much like the dab rig, be able to kick up the last bit of temperature and get all your cannabinoids.
Yeah, yeah, and so yeah, no, I might ping you about some of that after this call because I've been doing the 510 thread box mod stuff for like 4 or 5 years now. So I've got and like for example, that Torch product is actually just a rebranded Yokan battery with their slightly customized coil, but it's all produced by a Chinese company. Like I know all the ins and outs of all this world, so I'm happy to let you know about the
I'd
world.
love to know more about that. I'm
Yeah,
not a big
because
hardware guy.
I love the hardware side of things, and like I said, for me, I have like custom firmware that I use, but unfortunately, like you mentioned, from a consumer perspective, I'm not ever going to see a retail store go ahead and sell somebody a vape battery, and then they'll tell them to go ahead and upgrade the firmware to make it work with a coil. There's no consumer world where that's going to be possible, right? So, maybe someday in the future we get a company that's smart enough to build this in an all-in-one kit that works off the bat, but we're a ways from that mark yet. So,
Hey,
but
manufacturing's coming a long way now. You come up with an idea, and there's a factory in Shenzhen that's
yeah.
going to produce it for you and ship it over.
Yeah, no, I already, so like I know the factories where you need some ceramic coils built. Like I'll tell you the factory in China to get them built from. So, yeah, I'm gonna wrap this up for now. This has been an
It was great
awesome
chatting with
blast.
you.
Yeah, I've had such a great time, and like this is definitely one of the coolest ones that I've been able to have because I've been able to talk to somebody who's really just heads down with the real world of the extracts. So, really appreciate your time, Eric. If you got anything
Absolutely.
else, feel free to say it. Shout out anybody if you need to. But yeah,
No, it's just it's. I think our goal has really been to try to help and educate people as best as we can. We're learning every day. That's the one thing that has been the motto here with our extraction team. We're always open to ideas. We're always looking to find improvements and always happy to share a lot of that knowledge. I really don't think of the Canadian market as a big competitive playground. I see it as a cooperative playground. There's going to be a little bit of IP, a little bit of processes that's unique to everybody. But outside of that, the more time that we spend out there trying to raise awareness with the consumer so that they understand what they're consuming and how it's made, I think that just improves the overall state of the industry and hopefully grows the industry a little bit more.
nice. Yeah, I love to hear it. So, you have yourself a great weekend. It might seem
You too,
silly.
man.
Don't work too long. Don't work too much today, but I don't think that's